Hawkeye fans, let's talk about health and performance optimization for a moment. Our sponsor, Ascent Nutrition, offers amazing products. It's actually owned by former Iowa graduate Lance Shuttler. Now, I've decided to partner with Ascent Nutrition because of their unique approach to human health. Ascent offers an organically grown, mold and mycotoxin-free coffee. It provides a pure, clean, and rich flavor without those pesticides that most coffees are treated with. They also offer an algae oil DHA, which is used to support brain health, memory, and focus, as well as proper nervous system development in adults, children, athletes, and even pets. Now, lastly, their unique crafted wild pine pollen is used to support cardiovascular health, hormonal function, and a healthy libido. Your purchase not only supports this channel, but the business of a former Hawkeye. Visit goascentnutrition.com or click the link in the description below and use the code Hawkeyes. That's the code Hawkeyes to receive 10% off your total order from Ascent Nutrition. All right, let's move to the schedule, boys. This is our highlight of our show every year. And we've just got.
Did you find that? Did you find that document?
I did. Do you want to look back at last year?
What we did last year?
Yeah, I've still got it saved from last year. I don't know why, but I still got it.
On us.
Okay, so Corey,
results from last year.
First, I'm going to ask you, what was Iowa's record?
10-2 in the regular season, 10-4 overall.
Okay, and these are just, for the most part, regular season. Who did they lose to in those two games?
They lost to Wisconsin and Purdue.
Okay. So, none of us picked them losing to Purdue. And you said Wisconsin was the other one, right?
Yeah, yes. Wisconsin was the other one.
3 out of 4, everybody but Corey picked Wisconsin as one of the losses. So, Corey, you said they were going 9-3 with losses to Iowa State, Maryland, and Northwestern.
Now, in my defense, they almost lost to Northwestern. And, I mean, Iowa State was favored in that game in Ames. Iowa played really well. Maryland was undefeated when they played Iowa. Now, I will say this, too. I did predict Iowa was going to win the West last year. You remember when I said that? I
actually have that written down here. You said that you were going to win the West.
And you know I don't always predict that. I mean, you call me a homer all you want. I don't always predict that.
With a 7-2 conference record.
Which they had.
So you know that one. So Alex had them at 10-2 with losses to Wisconsin and Northwestern in back-to-back weeks. Micaiah had them at 10-2, losing to Wisconsin and Minnesota. And then I had them at 9-3, losing to Indiana in week 1, and then Penn State and Wisconsin.
So
I believe, I don't know if he has this written down, but I believe I also said that they would still win the West over Wisconsin and whoever else, even though they lost to Wisconsin.
Okay, that's also my next question. Did everybody else predict the 7-2 was good enough to win the West?
I can't remember that.
I think Alex said no. I want to say Alex said no, but he's not here to clarify on that.
I can't remember what I said. So, but we were all pretty close to accurate last year.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's run through it. I've been breaking down the schedule throughout the summer and taking each opponent one by one. I'll do this kind of in a quicker version here, and we're going to actually make selections. Just for everybody knows, I have not done this. I always wait till this show to actually give you my picks and my preseason predictions. I'll come out with a video on the YouTube channel that kind of sums it up. But let's go ahead and do this. We'll start with number 1, South Dakota State, the Jackrabbits, led by longtime head coach John Stiglmeyer, very respected guy in the Summit League. And, I should say, are they even Summit League? I guess technically they're Missouri Valley, I believe, in the FCS in football. But very good program, one of the best in the FCS. We know Iowa lost to an FCS power in North Dakota State back in 2016. This is a tricky game. South Dakota State had 2 guys drafted last year, one at quarterback, one at running back. That scares a person because it shows that they're producing NFL-level talent. They did lose those guys, but I've got Iowa. I'm not going to predict an upset here. I don't know what the spread is. I don't know if Vegas puts out spread. There are spreads out there, but it's an FCS, FBS game, so I don't know what the spread is going to be, I may take South Dakota State against the spread. I could see this being closer than people want. Noah?
I'm going to take Iowa. Again, not knowing what the spread is, just picking it straight up, I'll take Iowa.
I would take Iowa against the spread. That would be my initial inclination without even looking at it, okay?
I'm also taking Iowa.
Okay, so not much hesitancy from you guys. That's fine. I mean, I'm not going to predict.
I never pick an FCS team to beat Iowa. I just don't.
Well, that's good.
That's an insult to the FCS. They have quality football over there too. I just.
And FCS should never beat Iowa. That's the bottom line. They shouldn't ever.
The last time was, what'd you say, 2016?
Yeah, and they almost lost to UNI back in 2009 if it weren't for the 2 block kicks in the final seconds of that game.
That was nuts. That was one of my first years. That was one of my first years following Hawkeye football. I listened to that game on the radio. Man, that was
all right. Noah, you always bring up my memory. 2014. Look it up. 2014 Iowa UNI. I believe they won that game, but boy, that was a game where David Johnson, and yes, the David Johnson, carved Iowa up. And I won't say who was the linebacker that got carved. There were 2 linebackers that got carved in that game. Am I correct in saying Iowa won, but David Johnson had a ton of yards?
Okay, so Iowa won 31-23.
Yeah, way too close.
Full team stats.
Get a box score on that.
Box score. Here we go.
I want to know how many total yards Johnson had.
13 carries for 34 yards.
Okay, but how many receiving yards?
Receiving.
Yes. Okay.
5 receptions for 203 yards.
Listen, you don't remember that game. I do. We're talking dinking and dunking over Iowa linebackers, and it was almost like the Christian McCaffrey thing at the Rose Bowl. And you guys know David Johnson in his prime. I mean, he's kind of phased out now in the league, but in his prime, he was one of the best running backs in the league.
Mm-hmm.
So think about him going up against the Iowa linebackers. That was a subpar group of linebackers.
And his long in that game for receptions was 70 yards.
I think I remember the play. I mean, it was just, I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, these linebackers can't cover anything. But I don't think we realized how good David Johnson was at the time. So, boy, he's a guy. You know, Iowa offered him as a walk-on. Talk about a miss. They wanted him to walk on. Unbelievable.
Wow.
Another miss at running back. Okay. So we're all picking Iowa against South Dakota State. We move on to week 2. It's the Cyhawk series. Iowa hasn't lost this game since 2014. Iowa State losing or down Breece Hall, who's now a New York Jet. They're down Brock Purdy, who's with the 49ers. So different looking Cyclone team. They do have a quarterback a lefty who's broke some records in high school. He's certainly a talented guy. Iowa got a look at him last year when Purdy was pulled from that Cyhawk game. I'm taking Iowa in that game mainly just because it's at home. I think on the road, I mean, I just don't know what to expect from Iowa State. And this series is so weird. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if Iowa State won this if it was in Ames.
It's anybody's game basically any year.
But it would surprise me if they win in Iowa City. I just think I just would be surprised. I don't know that Jyrell Brock or whoever else is at running back. You know, they have Xavier Hutchinson coming back. You know, how good can he be at receiver? And do they have a quarterback that can get him the ball? I'm just not going to pick against Iowa in Iowa City, Micaiah.
I pick Iowa by a field goal.
It's another close game.
I'm going to pick Iowa, but I think it's going to be close. These teams usually play each other pretty tough. We'll see.
The exception being 2016. You want to look up the score of that one too? Iowa State 2016.
42-3.
Yeah.
I will say, Iowa has won 6 straight in the series since their undefeated 2015 season. In 2014, the last game Iowa State won was in Iowa City. Iowa lost by a field goal.
Wasn't it like 9-6?
20-17. No, you're thinking of the year
12.
2 years before. 2012. That was in Iowa City. 9-6. And then the year before that, Iowa State also won 44-41.
Yeah, that was the Steel Jans year. No, the 2012 game was the most miserable game I've ever seen. I was watching that at a sports bar in Norwalk, Iowa. Okay. It was one of the most miserable games I've ever seen in my life. I was by myself at this sports bar watching this game and thinking, what am I watching here? Iowa just lost at home to a mediocre Iowa State team and scored 6 points doing so.
Was it 2018 that they had the really weird rain delay? I want to say it was 2018.
There was like a tornado warning in the area, and they had to delay the game for half an hour.
Oh, you're 2019.
Well, that was 2019. Okay, because I was going to say if it was 2018, they would be up there because that was 13-3.
Yeah, that was the year. I know where
they muffed the punt, right?
What?
I think Iowa State was going to get the ball back, and they blew the punt return, didn't they?
That was 19.
That was 19.
No, 2018 was the Brandon Smith throw where he kind of had his first big play of his career, kind of hyperextended his elbow too, and he got taken down to the ground. Smith Marset did the same thing, actually. He had a weird deep ball over Lawrence White of Iowa State. Why do I remember this? Let's
I don't know.
Okay. So I've got Iowa State. You guys, or excuse me, I've got Iowa. You guys
make sure you get that right.
You guys have Iowa. Iowa then, and by the way, for anybody that doesn't know, South Dakota State is an FS1 game at 11. Iowa State 3 p.m. on Big Ten Network. They get a night game against the Nevada Wolfpack at 6:30 on BTN. Nevada was coached by former Hawkeye Jay Norvell. He's now at Colorado State. I don't know. I could check. Nevada actually played today. Noah, can you look that up? Week 0. Nevada played New Mexico State. They may still be playing as we're recording this. Probably or not. But I don't think Nevada is going to be. New Mexico State's terrible, by the way. They were 2-10 last year.
Third quarter, Nevada's up 17-2.
2, really? Take a safety.
Yeah, 2.
So, in other words,
it's better than 1.
So Nevada at least is obviously substantially better than New Mexico State. But again, New Mexico State was terrible. I don't think Nevada. It's a night game. That's going to be an experience for the Wolfpack kids. Certainly, I don't see Iowa losing that game. It is the last game before you start Big Ten play. But I got the Hawkeyes. Noah?
I'll take the Hawkeyes.
Okay.
Iowa. I'm not really concerned at all.
Okay. All right. So we move on. And if anybody's keeping track, they're 3-0. Noah.
3-0.
3-0. All right. You move on. September is a very doable month. It's a tough schedule collectively, but September is a doable month. They go on the road to Rutgers.
Yeah, the schedule gets hard in October.
And the last time they played Rutgers, you want to look this up too? I can tell you. The last time they played Rutgers, not at home. They blew them out a couple of years ago at home. It was like 30-7. They played them on the road at Piscataway with George Kittle and C.J. Beathard, Akron Wadley, and they barely, I think it was like 14-7 in Piscataway. Am I correct on the score there, Noah? I believe it was 2016.
2016, 14-7.
Yeah, making it.
How do you remember this stuff?
That one I kind of guessed.
Now, Corey, 2019 in Iowa City. What was the score?
I think I said it, didn't I? Didn't I say 30-7 or 33-7? What was it?
30-0.
Okay, I was one score off. Yeah.
I still don't know how you remember all this stuff.
But no, they did shut them out. So that's a tricky trip to Piscataway. It's all the way across the country. Greg Schiano, obviously, his time with the Buccaneers and his first go around with Rutgers, they haven't played Schiano since he's been back. That's a tough game. I don't know how much better Rutgers will be this year, but I have to think they're going to be a decent defensive team. And with Iowa's offense, I mean, where are the points going to come from? So it'll be interesting to see. Can they kind of do what they did to Maryland last year and score a bunch of points in an early conference game against an East Coast team? It'll be intriguing. I've got Iowa winning that game, but it is a trap game. That is the definition of a trap game.
Especially when you look at the week after.
Yes.
I'm going to agree with you. I'll take Iowa, but
it's a big trap game.
Yeah.
I'm also taking Iowa.
Because they could be trying to look ahead to Michigan the week after.
I'm telling you, I don't think that Rutgers is going to be all that bad. I just don't. I know we're used to be Rutgers being bottom of the barrel. I'm kind of like with Rutgers the way I am with Illinois. I mean, I think Brett Bielema, that team's going to just steadily get better. Now, how much better can they get in a tough conference? You know, especially Rutgers in their division. But I think it's going to be a better team. I got Iowa winning. So we've all got them at 4-0 heading into a huge rematch against Michigan. That game, that Michigan game, just so you guys are aware, that could easily be hyped like the Penn State-Iowa game was last year. You remember that game and the hype around that game last year, right? Was it 2 versus 3? Wasn't Iowa 3, Penn State was 2? Or
2 versus 3, 2 versus 4. It was nuts.
Yeah. And of course, Iowa won that game by the skin of their teeth. I think the Michigan game, listen, they got blown out at the Big Ten championship game. They ain't going to get blown out in Kinnick. Can we agree on that? I just don't think they will.
It was 3-4. Iowa was 3, Penn State was 4.
Okay. So I'm not saying Iowa's going to beat Michigan, but I do think, I'm not saying that yet, but I do think that it will be close. Do you guys think that Michigan could blow Iowa out in that game at Kinnick? I just don't see that happening. Not again.
I think it's possible. I don't think they will.
Well, they haven't won. When's the last time they've won in Kinnick?
I don't know.
So, you know, the last time they played in Kinnick, they were like number 3 in the country and lost in 2016 behind a Keith Duncan game-winning field goal. And I could tell you the score of that game if you gave me a moment.
As he pulls it up on his phone.
No, I think it was like.
You're talking about. Were you talking the last game in Iowa City?
Yes, 2016. Yeah, because I know in 2019, Noah, 2019 they played and lost 10-3. I know. 2016 though, wasn't that game 23-21 or 21-19?
No, 2016 was 14-13.
14-13. Okay.
2013 was also in Iowa City. That was 24-21 Iowa.
Okay. So it's a house of horrors for teams. We know that it's a tough place to play. Ohio State could tell you that from 2017. But I think at this point, the
last time Michigan won in Iowa City was 2005.
Yeah, there you go. I think Iowa wins that game, boys. And I don't. Is there a talent gap? Yes, but look, I mean, say what you want about me predicting that Iowa was going to beat Michigan in the Big Ten championship game last year. This is a different situation when you're coming to Kinnick, and I would have to think that the 42-3 score will get brought up. It should get brought up. And I just don't see any way Iowa does not make this a close game. And if it's a close game in Kinnick, I'm taking the Hawks. Micaiah?
I hate to be that guy. I'm going to pick Michigan.
Close game?
I think it'll be a good game. I think it'll be close, at least until late.
Okay.
But no. I'm that one has danger signs all over the place.
That one's gonna. I might have Chili's cater in that game. that game is the game that, like I said, I could equate that kind of as long as both teams take care of business up until.
I am more nervous about Iowa losing to how they're going to play against Michigan than I am about how they're going to play against Iowa State. Now that's probably I don't think that's saying much, but
I don't know. I think I disagree with you. I think there's a better chance. This is my opinion. I think there's a better chance that they are not up to snuff against Iowa State because you've beat them how many times in a row? You're at home. Iowa State's not perceived. Iowa State's a big underdog. Whereas Michigan, you have motivation. You're the underdog. You've got a packed house. It's maybe going to be the marquee game in college football that week, and you're coming off a 42-3 loss to them last year. I think there's a better chance that they lay an egg against Iowa State. But that's just my opinion. Noah, your thoughts?
I also hate to be that guy, but I'm going to take Michigan.
Okay, fine, whatever.
I just can't see it. Like, I expect them to try, and I expect it'll be a close game, but I just
I mean, I thought
I have a bad feeling about this one.
Well, I thought we were friends, but let's move on. Okay, so I've got Iowa at 5-0. If you're keeping track, folks, I believe they'll start off. And keep in mind, we can play back the tape. I've been saying since January that there's no way unless Iowa's offense gets substantially better, and I'm talking top 80, at least top 90. That's at least a small jump that they're going to win 10 games.
That's not even much to ask of an offense.
No, it's not. 23rd it is. What I'm saying, I've said this since January. There's no way unless that happens that they can get back to 10 wins in the regular season again. They did it last year with that offense. They ain't going to do it this year because the schedule's so much more, so much tougher. Now, I do think they'll beat Michigan. I think they'll be 5-0, but I could see that game going either way. I do believe they'll be 4-0, but the schedule doesn't get any easier. Now, they do get a game at Illinois, which is another trap game. It's sandwiched between two massive contests, and you're going up against a Brett Bielema team that I think will be improved. They took care of business today in their season opener against Wyoming. I'm going to have to take Iowa. I'm not going to pick Illinois in that game, but Iowa's played with fire these last 2 years against the Illini, Noah.
I'll take Iowa.
Quick, simple, straight to the point.
I'll also take Iowa, though I think Illinois will be better than Rutgers.
Can we agree that Rutgers and Illinois, though, those are vintage trap games? Both.
Oh yeah.
You're on the road in
the toughest part of their schedule. It's the toughest part of their schedule. Those games are just like also there.
I would argue that Rutgers is more of the trap game because at least between Illinois and Ohio State, you have a bye week in there. So you've got a little bit more time.
You are right. We did not bring up the bye. I'm glad you brought that up. You are right. There is the bye. So
you've got Illinois on October 8th and then Ohio State at Ohio State in October 22nd.
Right. So let's move to that. So they get a bye. Are we all going Illinois? We make our picks?
Illinois?
Or excuse me. Are we all going Iowa?
He is wearing an orange shirt.
Yeah, the lineup. Insane. Are we all in agreement on this?
I think we're all in agreement that we're picking Iowa.
Okay, so we've got Iowa winning. You've got them at 5-1. I've got them at 6-0 at this point. But the Michigan game is going to be tough. I'm going to acknowledge that. I can just tell you right now, I'm not going to cut to the. I'm picking Ohio State over Iowa. That's a bulletin board game for the Buckeyes because the last time they played Iowa was in Kinnick, 42 to what was it? I should remember the score. Was it 42 to 17? 42-24. I'm sorry. 55-24. Damn, now I'm getting my scores confused. 55-24.
Yeah.
Okay. So Iowa's not going to win 55-24 this year in Columbus. That may be the best team in college football this year. They're certainly one of the top 3 in talent. They were in 2017 as well, one of the better, more talented teams. I mean, it'll be intriguing. If Iowa's 6-0, it's going to be an intriguing game. But to go on the road, I don't know anybody rational how anybody could possibly pick Iowa in that game. Maybe that means I'm a total hater. But I think if you're Ryan Day, if you're smart, you use that 2017. I don't care if there were guys on, if nobody that's on the current roster was on that roster. That doesn't matter. You bring it up as a source of pride playing for Ohio State and say, look, the last time we played these guys, we got our pants pulled down 55-24 because that's what happened, Noah. It was a total debacle.
3 pick sixes or something like that?
No, 3 picks for Josh Jackson and a pick 6 for Amani Hooker.
Okay. Because I just remember multiple interceptions from that game.
Yeah. So I've got Ohio State. Noah, anyway, Iowa wins this game.
Technically, they have a chance, but it's another one that I don't have a good feeling about it.
I think your defense now, Ohio State's going to have athleticism that they're going to face some of that against Michigan, but I think Ohio State's a notch above as far as talent, skill position talent, especially at wide receiver. Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jackson Smith and Jigba. They're really good at with their skill position guys, and of course CJ Stroud at quarterback. But the Iowa defense, I would think, could keep you in just about any game. Okay.
There's no way in heck that Iowa wins this game if their offense looks anything like it did last year.
Yeah, I agree because I don't know how you score.
The defense is good enough that can carry them through all these other, even the Michigan game. I picked Michigan. The defense is good enough. They might skate past Michigan, but they're not going to get past Ohio State if the offense is not good enough.
I agree. And what you don't want is you don't want a situation like the Big Ten Championship game. I mean, the Big Ten Championship game was like vintage Iowa. It was like the epitome of Iowa 2021. Like you remember that game? The defense held for the entire first half. It was like, 14-3 at halftime or 17-3 at halftime. And they held and they held and held. And the offense couldn't do anything to help the cause. And so eventually, even an elite defense breaks, right? Eventually you're going to break. And I'm with you, Mackay. I think eventually I could see that Ohio State game, as great as Ohio State's offense is, I could see that being a 21-7 game at halftime. But if Iowa can't get any momentum offensively, eventually it could turn into a 35-10 game. So I've got the Buckeyes. Man, I'm going opposite, aren't I? I got the Buckeyes. You guys have the Buckeyes. We move on to a game versus a Northwestern team that, boy, looked darn good today against a Nebraska team that people thought had turned the corner, at least, off-season hype. I had predicted Northwestern was going to win, but Ryan Helinski looked really good. They've got a better defensive line that at least against Nebraska, it produced a decent pass rush, and their offensive line looked really good. This is a tough one. I predicted Iowa last year that Iowa was going to lose this game last year. Northwestern was not nearly as good as I thought they'd be last year, although they still played that game close against the Hawks. I've got
17-12.
Yeah, I got Iowa winning at home, but we've also seen them lose at home to Northwestern. This is a 2 p.m. game. Noah?
I'll take Iowa.
Okay.
I'm going to pick Northwestern.
Really?
Yeah.
How about that? I mean, I don't blame you. I mean, this is, like I say, I watched that game today and I'm thinking, this is like the type of Northwestern team that, now I don't think they're as good top to bottom as some of these teams that have won the division, but I do think this is a team that can beat a good team. Not saying they're going to be able to knock off Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, several teams, but I mean,
they have the potential to beat one or two.
Yeah, maybe.
Can I just say, this is going to sound so dumb. I think I'm going to get based on my assumption of the roster. I think I'm going to get the record right. I have them, but I'm not going to spoil what my other picks are, but I think they're going to lose to one team I did not pick, and they're going to beat one team I did pick. It seems like that happens every year.
Yeah, I mean, it happened. I didn't get any of the picks right last year. I mean, my 3 losses were all wins. That's odd. But I should have known better than to pick Iowa State over Iowa. I should have known better than to pick Maryland over Iowa. Let's move on to we haven't gotten Noah's pick. Did you have Iowa?
Iowa.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure you did ask me, but put it on the record.
At Purdue, Iowa, Purdue's had Iowa's number. They now have 2 of Iowa's receivers, and Charlie Jones and Tyrone Tracy. I think there's some bad blood between these programs right now. You're on the road. That's going to be a fun one in West Lafayette. I've got Purdue. To me, it has to be proven. They got to prove it to me. Iowa has to prove that they're going to play Purdue differently. And yes, I know Purdue is, lost David Bell, but they just reload. And I think Charlie Jones is better than Iowa fans think he is on offense. I think he's going to be a really solid, productive receiver for them. They've got some other guys. Certainly Tracy Thompson is going to be a guy who's probably going to play a lot. I think they've got a shot at winning that game. I think they will win.
I am also going to take Purdue. And I think part of it is going to be the bad blood between the teams, with the players moving over to Purdue this year, wanting to prove a point to their previous team.
It's definitely going to be a good game.
Yeah, it's going to be a weird game, man. That's going to be. I've got Purdue. Man, a lot. This is not a show, folks. I mean, it is a show.
You want to? Oh, it's a show. It's just not the kind of show you were hoping for, is it?
No, We went into this and we told people, look, don't take us.
Just remember, these are expert opinions.
Right. Okay.
I'm going to pick Iowa over Purdue.
Okay. And Noah, who'd you say?
I said Purdue. I'm keeping track of all this still.
You keep track of this every year.
I'm keeping track of this still.
Okay. Iowa, Wisconsin in Iowa City. Blackout game. That's another opponent that Iowa just can't seem to figure out. They'll win that game here and there, but boy, here and there is not really here and there. They won in 2020 in a down year for Wisconsin during COVID. Prior to that, they hadn't beaten Wisconsin, I don't believe, since 2000. Let's see, 2009? Had they not won since 2009?
They played them in 2015.
And won. They won that. You're right. They won that game. That's right.
In Madison. They won it in Madison. Wisconsin.
Interesting. Oh yeah, that's right. Was that the 10-6 game? Yeah.
Yeah. But you're right. Before that it was 2009.
Yeah, that was the Faith Acakity fumble recovery game. So yeah, I mean, very few and far between. I'm going to go. I'll go Iowa because I don't think Wisconsin's offense is going to be very good either, with the exception being Braylon Allen. And with Iowa, what Iowa has at linebacker and defensive line, I think they have the defense to stop Braylon Allen in that Wisconsin run game this year. And normally, oftentimes, they still struggle to contain Wisconsin's run game. I think it's going to be better than it was last year. We know strength last year was creating turnovers. I think the strength will be more in the trenches this year on defense for Iowa. I think Iowa wins at home. No,
I will take Iowa.
Really?
What do you have them at right now, Noah? What are your picks?
Do
you have them at 10? Do you have them at
I have
losses,
them
or?
Currently, up to now, I have them losing 3 games: Michigan, Ohio State, and Purdue.
Okay.
I get the feeling because they usually have this one team that you expect them to lose to that they beat. Like I mentioned,
do we all agree that this schedule is a gauntlet this year?
It is.
Once you hit October,
it's a beast.
Once the schedule turns over to October,
well, it's a gauntlet that also features Nevada.
Yeah, so I say September. You better use September. I'm serious. You better use September.
That's your tune-up month. Like, get ready.
You better use it to get all the kinks out.
Yeah.
And you better darn well win every game in September, right? You cannot afford to lose a game in September. Now, you can't afford it from a conference race standpoint if you lose one of your first 3. I get that. But I'm just saying, if you're trying to get to 9 or 10 wins, you better not lose a game in September.
Because as tough as this schedule is, you've got Michigan, Illinois, Ohio State, Northwestern, Purdue, Wisconsin, Minnesota. It's like most of those
Nebraska
games,
is a decent team.
The ones I feel like that they have the best chance of winning against are Illinois and Northwestern. Most of those other games, I don't know. Like, I picked them against Wisconsin, but it's going to be one of those low-scoring games. I'm gonna plant my flag on that right now.
All right.
I'm gonna pick Iowa for the dumbest reason you have ever heard. It's called the gambler's fallacy. If you don't know what that is, look it up. I'm not going to go into it here, but Iowa is due to win.
Okay.
The last few years, Wisconsin has won too many games. So,
if we're going with that reasoning, then Iowa State's going to beat Iowa.
That's true.
Minnesota's going to beat Iowa. Nebraska's going to beat Iowa, because those are 3 series that Iowa has owned. Now, speaking of Minnesota, Iowa goes on the road to Minnesota.
Did we all pick Iowa to beat Wisconsin? We did, didn't we?
We did.
So
we'll have to unofficially get Alex's picks on this later to add to the list.
Yeah.
So a little bit of series history, because double check and make sure I got this right. Yeah, we're on to Minnesota. The last time Minnesota won was 2014, 51-14 in Minneapolis.
Was that the down year for Iowa? What did Iowa finish in 2014?
That was a down year. That was a 7-6 year, I believe. Correct, Noah?
I can look it up.
That was Tax Slayer Bowl 2020.
Baseline year for Iowa is 8-4. But you don't get 8 wins. You don't get 8 wins. It's a disappointing season.
7-6, 4-4 in conference.
Lost to Tennessee in the Tax Slayer Bowl. Gave up over 50 points to Tennessee in the Tax Slayer Bowl.
Not true. They scored 45.
Oh, 45. How about that?
Not 50.
All right. I got Minnesota, folks. And look. I'll talk about this in a moment, but Minnesota's. You return Tanner Morgan, you return Mo Ibrahim, who's coming off a leg injury. If he can stay healthy, that's going to be a really good football team. They lose some up front, but I think that's a good football team. And on the road, Ohio State found out last year it's tough to play up there. They were able to get it done, but I think Iowa, kind of what you just said, Micaiah, it's tough to. Eventually, the tide's going to turn, and I think PJ Fleck is a good coach. I mean, the guy has won a lot up there. Road game in late November, we could have snow in that game up in Minneapolis.
And you look at it last year, Iowa won, but it was a close game. It was only a 5-point game, 27-22. Yeah.
Shouldn't have won that game. Actually, all of Don Patterson's analytics were in Minnesota's favor in that game, and Iowa found a way to win the game. So you're right. They should not have won the game.
It was probably the defense. They found a way.
Right.
So Corey picked Minnesota. I think I'm going to side with Corey on this one. I think I'm going to pick Minnesota in this game.
Okay. We're all picking these games. Can we all agree that we're all picking these games under the assumption that the offense is not going to be leaps and bounds better?
Yeah. I expect roughly what we had.
If it is, look out.
If it is, bring on Alabama, bring on Clemson. No, I don't think any of us think that's going to happen. Okay.
I'm going to pick Iowa. It's going to be a tough game.
Well, they've owned the series. They have owned the series. Well, I'll tell you what's going to be.
Recently, they have.
Yes, recently.
Because overall, Minnesota has won more than Iowa.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I think Minnesota's got the talent. I think for the most part, Iowa's gotten, I shouldn't say fortunate. There is a knack in winning close games, but last year's a perfect example of that. That was a close game that they won. 2017 was a close game that they won against Minnesota. I didn't think Iowa played very well. I believe it was 14-7.
That was 16. 17 was 17-10.
17-10. I'm sorry. Didn't they have can you look up can you real quick? I know nobody else cares about this but me. Can you look up the 2017 schedule? I believe Iowa had 3 different games 17-10 that year. Why do I remember that? If I'm right on this.
It's not that hard to make an assumption. 17-10 is such an Iowa football score.
It is. 9-6 is even more of an Iowa football score.
Okay, so what were we looking for?
How many games finished 17-10?
Okay,
either way or just Iowa winning?
Either way.
Shout out to Iowa versus Iowa State, 44-41 in the same season. Let's see. Lost by 2 to Penn State. Michigan State, 17-10. That was on the 30th of September. They lost that game.
I believe that was the game where you found the moldy pizza. Go ahead. Go ahead.
The following week, destroyed Illinois 45-16. Then at Northwestern 17-10, lost. And then home versus Minnesota. The following week, there was a bye week between Illinois and Northwestern. They at home they beat Minnesota 17-10.
So there were 3. There were 3.
Yes, there were 3. Almost back to back. If not for Illinois, it would have been back to back.
I feel very accomplished. I feel very accomplished.
And then, of course, we round out the regular season nicely with a 56-14 win over Nebraska.
Was that the game we were at?
No,
that was
the
Nebraska game. You guys went to the 2016 Nebraska game.
Was it 16?
Yeah,
I remember the score, so
I just remember being hoarse afterwards.
It was 2016. They won 40-10. I didn't have a voice the next day.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that was a cold game too.
It was great though.
Late in the year. No, it was a great game. Okay, so I do want to move on to that final Nebraska game because, as you well know, that will be a game where Iowa's going to have to. It might be Scott Frost's last game as the Huskers head coach, because I don't know if they're going to fire him mid-season. But boy, unless he finds what's the expression? Finds lightning in a bottle. I don't know how he keeps his job. I think that Northwestern game today was that was it. I mean, he had to win that game. That's been the game people have been talking about all off season. The one conference game they won last year, and now they lose to that team to start 2022. I think he's done. So that may be just, pedal to the metal, hold nothing back type of game against the Hawkeyes, and it is in Lincoln. No, excuse me, it's at home. I'm sorry, it's at home. That's a positive. I've got Iowa winning the game. I don't have any reason to think it won't be close, but I got the Hawks winning. Micaiah?
I have Iowa winning. I think I've picked Iowa to beat. Now, you don't have the records going back that far. I know that. But I think I've picked Iowa to beat Nebraska every single year we've done this show.
Do you want me to say every year?
Yes. Records. I use Basketball Reference, Pro Football Reference, College Football Reference. You are the Micaiah Football Reference.
The Hawkeye Football Reference for this group.
So who'd you pick?
I only have last year's records. I don't have before that.
Who did you pick?
I'm going to pick Iowa.
Micaiah?
I picked Iowa. I never picked Nebraska over Iowa. I just don't.
Well, to be fair,
there are worse teams
that has worked in your favor
over Iowa. I'd never pick Nebraska over Iowa.
That has worked in your favor for 7 years. So,
final records. I've got Iowa at 9-3. Now the question is, and we can look at your guys' records. I believe you have them at 8-4, and Micaiah's got them at 8-4. Correct?
9-3.
9-3.
You got them at 9-3. Okay, so.
Yeah, I have them beating Wisconsin and Minnesota.
Okay, so let me say this: 9-3 is going to be if it's 9-3 that I'm predicting. It includes a loss versus Purdue, a loss versus Ohio State. The Ohio State loss does not hurt you. It does hurt you in the Big Ten race, but it does not hurt you. It's not a double whammy like losing to a West opponent, right? So you lose to Ohio State. I've got losing to Purdue and losing to Minnesota. I think the four clear contenders, especially with Nebraska bowing out. I saw Kirk Herbstreit had predicted that Nebraska was going to win the West. I don't know where he's getting that. I get that they've had talent, but boy, you got to prove it on the field. And certainly, I think they proved that they're not ready to take that step. So I think the four contenders are clearly Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Purdue. Now, if you want to pull this up, Noah, you certainly can, but I'll just tell you, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota all have difficult schedules. They're crossover games. They get 2 crossover opponents in the East. As you know, you have 3 total. Each team plays 6 within the divisions, within their respective division, and then 3 games out of the division. And all 3 of those teams drew 2 of 3 crossover opponents from the East out of the contender group, if you will. We're talking Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio State, Michigan. Purdue, they're the one exception. So Purdue, let me just real quickly, because we don't have time to run through everybody's schedules. But if you look at Purdue's schedule, Purdue plays Penn State Thursday. All right. So that's the first Big Ten game of week 1. It's a huge game. You beat Penn State. That's their one real difficult crossover game. They get Wisconsin on the road, but again, you're going to get Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Northwestern, But their crossover opponents are Maryland on the road, again, Penn State at home, and Indiana on the road. Purdue, let me say this, make this very clear. If Purdue beats Penn State this coming Thursday, they are the favorites to win the Big Ten West. They are the favorites. The schedule is much more doable. They get Iowa at home. They do have to play Minnesota and Wisconsin on the road. But again, so does everybody else. Plus, you get 2 crossover games for these other 3 opponents.
And you also get Penn State at home, too.
You get Penn State at home. So this game on Thursday is massive. I don't think people are going to understand that. Like Iowa fans who don't follow it enough don't really realize how big this game is in like 4 days. It's huge. And it's weird that we're getting a Big Ten game in literally the first day of September, but that's just how it is. You look at Minnesota, they do go on the road to play Michigan State, and they go on the road to play Penn State. Those are 2 extremely difficult games. They get Rutgers at home. But again, 2 of the 3 crossover opponents are against what I would consider the top tier of the Big Ten Conference if you want to group those 4 teams together. Wisconsin, of course, they get Michigan State on the road as well. They get Maryland at home, and they get Ohio State on the road. So, I mean, Iowa's not alone in having these difficult games, Noah, but Purdue clearly is, in my opinion, the favorite if they win Thursday. So with that being said, my prediction is that Purdue will win the West. I'll give my final predictions maybe in a segment later on this week on the channel as far as just conference predictions for everybody. But I've got Purdue winning the West. Iowa, of course, losing to Purdue, it does not bode well because they've got the most favorable schedule. You lose that game to Purdue, you almost got no chance, unless Purdue does not pan out. I think they're the favorite.
And you also have them losing to Minnesota, which, again, that's not going to help either.
Right. Yeah, I mean, preferably if you get 3 Big Ten losses, you'd prefer them be against Michigan, Ohio State, and Rutgers, right? Those would be the 3 losses you'd prefer. Because guess what? You're going to win well, I shouldn't say you're going to win the West. You're going to have a decent shot of winning the West at 6-3, I think, if your 3 losses are to East opponents. If
you're beating the other top of the West teams,
not a guarantee.
You got an advantage.
Not a guarantee.
If
those 2 teams, those teams have tough crossover games. Okay.
If this team is a little bit better on offense, and their only losses are to Michigan and Ohio State, and they're 10-2 again, then they could certainly win the West. But that's a tall order on this schedule.
I agree. I mean, look,
those are 2 games you can perfectly expect to lose. Like those are acceptable losses.
If Aiden O'Connell goes down for Purdue at quarterback, then it changes everything. I mean, it's not like there's this huge gap between Purdue and everybody else. That's not what I'm implying. If Aiden O'Connell goes down, it's a schedule and it is personnel because I think Aiden O'Connell's the 2nd best quarterback in the Big Ten Conference behind C.J. Stroud at Ohio State. But it does change everything. If Braylon Allen at Wisconsin goes down, I think it changes a lot. Now, they've got a defense to fall back on, but he is really the only thing you can count on, I think, in that offense. And then similarly at Minnesota, if they lose Mo Ibrahim again, boy, they don't have the depth at running back they had last year to be able to deal with that. And as you know, Noah, sometimes these knee injuries, they can happen. They can reoccur, right? That's just what happens sometimes with knees. You don't want that for Mo Ibrahim. I think he's a pro, but injuries are a part of the game. So I've got Iowa losing 3 games and missing out on the West Championship.
Keep going. I can ask later.
I'm done. I mean, anything, Noah, you have them winning the West at, no, you don't have them winning the West at 8. No,
not at 8-4, with losses to Michigan, Ohio State, Purdue, and Minnesota.
All Big Ten teams. Micaiah, do you have them winning at 9-3? Your 3 losses are to who?
Michigan,
Ohio State, Northwestern.
Yep.
Well, if that happens, they might win it at 9-3. See, that's a perfect example. They've beaten every other contender. They've beaten every contender, so they have a better chance of winning the West in if that pans out than my scenario.
Yeah, I think it's my scenario is about 50-50. with a 9-3. If things go the way that I predicted, I think it's about a 50-50.
I think the winner of the West will likely be 10-2. Or excuse me, I shouldn't say it. The winner of the West will likely be 7-2, but I could see it them being 6-3. Whereas a normal year, I would probably say, the winner of the West is more likely to be either 8-1 or 7-2. I don't know what history shows. I guess I could look back at that. Iowa, of course, was 7-2 last year. I won the West, but yeah, that's all for me. Anything you guys got to add to the discussion?
I think I'm good. 40 minutes past our 1 hour cutoff point.
I determined this about 45 minutes ago. We're going to split this into two. So I'll split it up. We'll split up into two segments.
Like the depth chart and then the schedule will be the two different pieces.
Yeah. So if people are watching, they've already figured that part out. But I'm going to be splitting this long segment into two. So appreciate you two guys jumping on.
I do just want to say one thing real quick. I noticed just looking at the schedule. I have Iowa going 4-0 in September, 1-3 in October, and 4-0 in November.
That's honestly, that's kind of an Iowa thing to do. Like, doesn't it? What did they do last year?
Especially if you look at.
Wait, that's what they did last year.
October is.
What was last year? Did they go?
They won out. They won out in September.
Yep.
They won.
They won out in November.
So yeah, they split October, and then
they had to have. They were 10-2. They had to have won out in November.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what they did last year.
So they were. So there was 4 in September, 4 in October, 4 in November.
As far as I can tell, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the Iowa thing to do, Micaiah. Now, that being said, I still think, I know you're right. They could lose to Michigan and Ohio State. Here's the problem, and I'll just say this one more thing to add here. The problem scenario comes up where they lose to Michigan and Ohio State in October, Micaiah, and even though you're predicting that they're going to win every other game, I don't think any of us are going to be feeling very good if they lose both of those games, which is very possible. They lose both those games to Michigan and Ohio State. I think all of us are going to be like, we're going to have a hard time not being 8-4.
Especially also if we continue on Micaiah's scenario here, and they lose again in the next week
to Northwestern. Oh, if that happens, it's panic. It's a full-on panic mode because are you telling me now? Micaiah's predicting it, but I don't know. I don't think most people are going to predict that they're going to, after doing that, win against Minnesota, Purdue, Wisconsin. That's just a tough ask.
The only thing you can say at that point, if they turn it around after they're losing, especially back-to-back to Ohio State and Northwestern, I think the only thing you could say at that point is that they pulled the team together and it's like, all right, we got to turn this around. We got to turn this around now, or this season's falling apart. But
I make picks in my gut, okay? Like my gut says this, so that's what I picked. I'm not very familiar with the rosters of these teams. So
2020, they started off 0-2, and it looked like the wheels were coming off. They had the off-season racial discrimination stuff that was certainly a distraction, and they were 0-2 to start the season, and they ended up winning 6 straight. Now, it was a COVID year, and other teams were down and dealing with problems, but I guess the point is the wheels could have come off, and Kirk did rally the guys. So let's hope that doesn't happen. I think if you can split the Michigan and Ohio State games and take care of September, you at least set yourself up to be competitive for the West Division. I just, now if the offense somehow is top 70, top 80, okay, now I could see them. I could see them at that point figuring out a way. I still don't think it's a shoo-in to get to 10. The schedule's just too tough. I mean, I'm predicting 9-3. I could see 7-5. I mean, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. I could squint.
I don't either.
I could squint and see 6-6. I'm not. I think the defense is too good that I think it will.
The defense
carry.
will keep them in a lot of games this year.
Yeah, and I think they're too good at winning close games. I think the program is just built on that, and so. But I'm just saying, Michigan, Ohio State. Let's just see how many reasonable potential losses there are on the schedule. We'll assume that Northwest, even though Mackay is predicting them lose Northwestern, let's assume that they're not going to lose to Northwestern, Nebraska, Illinois, or Iowa State or Rutgers. So the reasonable losses, would be Wisconsin, Minnesota, Ohio State, Michigan. There's 4. Purdue, 5. So you could call 5 very, very possible losses, plus all those ones that we're just assuming they're going to win. You see what I'm saying? So it's a tough stretch, and you're right. It's all about October and all about November. All right, folks. Appreciate you everybody being here. And if you thought you were going to get a deeper, I thought we did pretty good. I thought you guys really applied the what do you call it? The advice from our dear listener Ken last year. We won't
didn't strike out this time.
What's that? Mackay to read it?
You want me to read? You want me to actually read this?
Sure. Go ahead.
The guy in the top right is a great voice and setup guy. The bald guy he throws softballs to keeps striking out.
Just for the record, I am not showing this to try to compliment myself on him saying I'm a great setup guy. I really do find an intense degree of humor in that tweet. That comment. I take great joy in it. We look forward to, I'm assuming we're going to, just the thought of eating a lot of Little Debbie junk right now does not appeal to me at all. But
it's nostalgia.
The reality is, when we get together to watch football games, usually we're not eating celery and carrots.
No, it's the we went to the dollar store and here, this is what I got for snacks. Hands you a plastic tub.
I will say this: I don't want you to think that. I don't want you to think it. You remember? Was it last year that I fixed that chicken?
Yeah,
I think that was last year.
I found another one.
Please tell me it hasn't been in the freezer since last year.
No comment. Listen, it was in the deep freezer and it's a whole chicken. So I'm gonna we'll bring that out in September.
If we keep hanging out for these, if we especially if we do it as much as we did last year, I gotta make cheeseburgers.
Well, I told Noah, I said, do you have a George Foreman?
I got a griddle.
I will bring my George Foreman to Marshalltown.
He said he'd rather use the griddle.
The griddle would make him a little bit better.
Well, yeah, if you can,
it won't be as lean. It'll be
literally juicier. It sits on the countertop and you plug it in.
I'm glad we got this in the podcast so everybody can.
Yeah, this is tailgating. This is the tailgating part of the podcast.
Just so you guys know, and as you know, I've got the hatchback. One of my vehicles is a hatchback. We watched last year Iowa Big Ten baseball. Friend of mine came over. We watched it in the back of the hatchback. We brought the TV out in the back of the hatchback. It was awesome, man.
You actually did tailgate with a hatchback.
It was fantastic. It was great. We enjoyed it. It was a beautiful evening. And so anyways, all right, folks, we're going to wrap this thing up. Stay tuned right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm all week long, all season long. Intense breakdown. We'll have Coach Don Patterson on the show later this week. We'll have post-game coverage after Iowa. What's that?
Don Patterson's an actual expert.
Don Patterson, the actual expert. We'll have him on twice this week, including the post-game show after the game against South Dakota State this Saturday. Please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button if you're interested in sponsoring the show, including the post-game show with Coach Don Patterson. Great opportunity to grow your business. Reach out to me from the Eye of the Storm at Outlook.com. That's from the Eye of the Storm at Outlook.com. We'll talk to you soon.